Water is wet. Penn State wins another national title, but they got to replace 3 starters. David Taylor coached 2 wrestlers to unexpected NCAA titles, and Iowa got 3 finalists, but only one of them won, and that guy is moving on. So everybody, all the top programs here in college wrestling certainly have their work cut out for them this offseason.
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
You are locked on to college wrestling. Thanks so much for checking out this Locked On crossover. I'm Zach Seyko, the host of Locked On Nittany Lions. That is Cody Stovall, the host of Locked On Oklahoma State, and Trent Condon, the host of Locked On Hawkeyes, teaming it up to recap the NCAA tournament. But we got to go through the offseason expectations, a vibe check, if you will, to see where Iowa, Oklahoma State, and Penn State are going into next season, what work has to be done, how Nebraska could potentially be a threat in all of this in the transfer portal. There's already chaos, so we're going to talk about all of it here. Penn State is replacing 3 starters. One of them is the one and only 5-time national champion in Carter Starocci. I still expect Penn State to be a national champion at the end of the team, win the team national champion next season as well. They just picked up an insane commitment from a former world champion and Masanosuke Ono. They're going to most likely have Zach Ryder slide in at 184. I think there's some questions around heavyweight and everything else, but Penn State should be in another similar situation where all 10 wrestlers could be All-Americans. Cody, you kind of had the surprise upsets there with Wyatt Hendrickson and Dean Hamady winning titles at Oklahoma State. But similar to Iowa, the Cowboys and David Taylor are going to have to go back to the transfer portal if they want to fill a complete lineup again.
Well, I mean, thankfully, we've already kind of kicked this thing off, adding Iowa State All-American Casey Swiderski to the lineup. I think that's going to be huge. Whether he's at 141, 149, I don't really think it matters. Taking Jamison, I think, is going to factor into that equation next season as well. So I think it'll be contingent upon what he does in the weight room. But you're already seeing some of the maneuverability start to happening in the transfer portal. One thing I will say is Troy Bradley was a transfer who competed for a national championship. Dean Hamady Jr. was a transfer that did win a national championship. And Wyatt Hendrickson, also a transfer that won a national title over arguably what is one of the greatest wrestlers in the history of the sport in Gable Stevenson. So I do think that if you are a transfer and you're looking to get the most out of your opportunities, Wyatt Hendrickson, Dean Hamady Jr., and Troy Bradley just proved that the Magic Man has magic in pursuing some of the best talent in the country that can get better by coming to Stillwater.
That's a massive selling point. Iowa's got to go up against that. I don't think Penn State doesn't need these overhaul type of changes through the transfer portal, but Oklahoma State and Iowa are going to be going up against each other, Trent, for these coveted transfer portal entries, and it's already starting.
It absolutely does. And when you look at Iowa, the lineup questions that are there, after 133, definitely 141. That was the one weight that Iowa did not even have a qualifier. So you start right there, what they're going to do. There are plenty of options at 49. Really, the best thing for everybody is if everybody could shift down in terms of the team race for Iowa. If you could get Arnold down to 74, you could get Kennedy down to 65 and Caliendo down to 57. Wow. But when you're asking that many guys to do it, you guys know the reality of that situation. To ask one guy to cut, sometimes physically they can handle it, but to ask 3, maybe 4 guys to cut, it's just not going to happen. So because of that, that would be their best lineup. I don't see that happening. And there's still the looming question at 197 that I'm sure we're going to get to a little bit later.
Oh, are we going to get to it later? Because I was going to throw it right back at you. AJ Ferrari hopped in the transfer portal the second we started this show. So is Ferrari, what are the odds that he ends up back at Iowa to be alongside his brother Angelo?
So it's such a crazy situation. And the Ferraris are unlike anything that we have in wrestling. We got personalities, right? We got some different type of people.
Oh, yeah.
AJ, though, personally takes it to another level. And I have people that I trust on both sides. I have people that say it's a lock. He's there, and I've been saying that for months that he is coming back. I've had also people that I really trust that say there is not a chance in hell that he will ever be allowed even back inside the city borders of Iowa City. So that's the dichotomy that we're dealing with here. It is one of those things where you talk to one person, they think they know. You talk to another, they think they know. And it's completely opposite stories. That's where I am. I'm at the point now where it is just kind of sit back, because I feel like outside of actually having Tom Brands return my phone call, I'm not going to get a straight answer from anybody inside the wrestling program. And the people that would know or at least have an inkling, I get 1,000 different responses. It is one of the more compelling situations I think that we've dealt with in this new era of collegiate athletics. This is something so wild because he was in Iowa City, but he wasn't a student there. And then Cody, you could fill us in with some details too, because I like I said, there's plenty of people that do not want to see him back in Iowa City and believe he'll never be in Iowa City. And I'm sure you hear those same kind of stories in Stillwater.
Yeah, well, there's some things that should probably remain off air about his time in Stillwater, Oklahoma. But I can say wholeheartedly, there's not a single individual alive that would love nothing more than him never to come back to the state of Oklahoma. But at the same time, right, Iowa, I think, understands that there is a little bit of a different landscape now in collegiate wrestling. They appear to be the number 2 with some competition potentially. And then Nebraska, right, they had a phenomenal run in not only the Big Tens, but in the national championships as well. And you mentioned, cutting weight. Correct me if I'm wrong. You guys are the wrestling savants. I'm kind of a newbie. But didn't Nebraska have like 3 or 4 dudes cut weight just to kind of make this run? So it is a possibility. And we could have the conversation about Nebraska. But AJ Ferrari, I hope that for the sake of everyone in Iowa City, that he does not end up back at Iowa in any capacity unless it's going to be to face them. One of the most interesting things here, I think, is the conversation about Iowa State. Honestly, I'm just going to call a spade. Anybody, anywhere that is willing to bring in AJ Ferrari is less concerned about the morality and the potential issues than they are about just getting back to winning again. And I think that, I don't know, man. I don't think that's good for the sport of wrestling. I mean, look at the dude. He had zero humility. He loses, and then the next thing he does is talk about how nobody in this building can compete with him, yet he just lost. He's not going to change, right? He's going to give some facade of him being a different character, but this individual is proof that he has a large lack of character. I'm trying to keep words somewhat PG here. But yeah, Iowa fans should want nothing to do with that train wreck. And I would be disappointed if Iowa State is in fact getting desperate. I know Dresser might be this desperate, but I think it's a bad look for any university to bring him in just because he's talented.
Trent, does Iowa need him? Because I think Penn State is the number one. Again, Nebraska's there now in the way. Oklahoma State, because of David Taylor, is always going to be in the thick of this. There is a 4-team race right now. Penn State has a clear distance, but it's not that, Iowa's the clear-cut number 2. No, Oklahoma State can be there. Nebraska now, which we're going to talk about a little more in addition to the transfer portal. So, Trent, do the Hawkeyes, aside from, again, because that's how other programs see it, well, let's put the morality aside. Let's put the character concerns aside. We want to win. How does Iowa look at it? Is this their best option, or do they have other options they can go to?
Yeah, I just don't think there's another path. If you're talking about winning a national championship, I mean, we look at it this year. They had 2 guys that went down with injury. And even if both those guys wrestled for national championships, you're talking about at best with bonus points, 20 points for each weight class. You even add 20 points for each of those guys, 40 total points to Iowa's total. They're still 60 points behind Penn State. And though we anticipate Penn State is going to come back a little bit more to the pack next year, when you look at the team race, say the target number is, 140 points. Can Iowa get to 140 points with their current roster, or even adding a All-American? Probably not. You would need AJ Ferrari to get to that number, and that is, are you selling your soul to the devil to make it happen? That's the kind of conversations that you get into. So if the question is, does Iowa need him to win the national championship next year? I think the answer is yes, but there is much more that goes into it than just the numbers.
Well, he's not, again, there is Angelo Ferrari there, who is a title contender at 84. I know there's Max McAnally. Of course, Zach Ryder is the presumed replacement at 84 for Penn State. So we can talk about that a little more as far as what Penn State's lineup is going to look like, because you just said they're going to return to the pack a little bit, that they're going to take a step backwards. And it's hard for me to process that with some of the recruits that they have coming in that are ready to go and start right away. Penn State actually has too much talent that they don't have to go chasing it in the transfer portal, plus the Nebraska issue. We're going to talk about that all and more coming up next on this Locked On Crossover. Today's show is brought to you by Nissan. We're all about the stats because numbers do not lie. And when it comes to the all-new Nissan Armada Pro 4X, the numbers are on an MVP level. With the ability to tow up to 8,500 pounds, it can quite literally carry the whole team, plus the gear wherever you need to go. It's powered by a twin-turbo V6 engine, delivering the strength, performance to handle highways, back roads, and everything in between. And with room for up to 8 people, the Armada Pro 4X is built for big crews, big adventures, and even bigger memories. Whether you're exploring off-road trails or rolling up to the arena, the Armada Pro 4X brings power, versatility, and style wherever you go. Take your adventures to new heights in the all-new Nissan Armada Pro 4X. Learn more at nissanusa.com. That is nissanusa.com. And today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200. That is right, $200 in bonus bets when you win your first $5 bet. That's 200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who's cutting down the nets. You can pick your favorites. If you've got your eye on a few underdogs this year, FanDuel will make it easy to back them with spreads, totals, and game props. You get to stay in the action with FanDuel. With tournament games happening almost every day, there's always something exciting to bet on. It's easy. It's fast with FanDuel. The FanDuel app is simple to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. There's no waiting around. So visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. Again, that is FanDuel.com. Looking at Penn State's lineup, they are replacing 3 starters, 3 national title contenders. Now, Gable Stevenson's out of the way, but Greg Kirkfleet was a defending NCAA champion, picked up an injury in practice along the way, or, who knows, maybe that matchup, again, that's a lot of what ifs, but Wyatt Hendrickson was the guy if there was anybody that was going to take him out. So kudos to you, Cody, for calling that Wyatt Hendrickson was going to pull off the unthinkable, that he had the best chances to do it, and it happened. It actually happened. But to go off of Penn State, they need a replacement at heavyweight. They need to replace a 5-time NCAA champion and Bo Bartlett, who was a top 3 wrestler, no matter how he just had the Jesse Mendez issue. It was just the Jesse Mendez issue.
Right.
But Penn State has Masanosuke Ono coming in, who could wrestle at 33, 41, could potentially bump Braden Davis, who just finished top 5 at 133. He could bump him out of the lineup. Maybe he takes a red shirt. Maybe he enters the transfer portal. Who knows? At 141, Marcus Blaze, the younger brother of Joey Blaze, who just came up second place, who just finished in second at 157 against Antrell Taylor of Nebraska. Younger brother's better. The younger brother was the top recruit in the class of 2025 and should be positioned to start right away at 141. Maybe they redshirt him. Maybe what I'm getting at is that Penn State has options, whether that's at 33 or 41. They have too much talent where it's a logjam, where Oklahoma State and Iowa are somewhat scrambling to kind of find, hey, what replacements can we get to keep up with Penn State? And that, I think, heavyweight is the biggest concern, if you will. Penn State could go to the transfer portal if they see somebody that they could use as a grad transfer or a one and done, essentially somebody that is coming up towards the end of their eligibility. But I don't know somebody that fits that wrestler profile at this point in time. Cole Mirasola, depending on his development, no issues with him at heavyweight, but there is a big drop off there. You're going from somebody who's probably going to be a fringe All-American at best, from someone who was an NCAA champion and was only second when he was healthy to Gable Stevenson. So Penn State, I think, does take somewhat of a step back. They can still get 10 out of 10 All-Americans. All of those wrestlers have All-America potential. They still have NCAA title favorites at 25, whatever 33 and 41 look like, 49, 57, 65, 74. 84 is a question mark, but Zach Ryder should be right there as an All-American. Josh Barr was the runner-up at 97, his first season starting. So Penn State is still going to win a national title, but Trent, I do agree with you that maybe a little, just a small step backwards, a small step. Part of that is because Nebraska is going to be as strong and as loaded as they are, returning essentially everybody but Ridge Lovett and Caleb Smith. I'm sure they'll find an answer at 125, but that lineup to return 8 starters. Mark Madden in Nebraska had a phenomenal tournament. They finished second overall. Yes, it was 60 points behind Penn State, but remember, Penn State had a 100-point margin of victory the tournament before. So there was they slashed away 40 points. 40 points. Are you guys concerned at all about Nebraska stealing some of the spotlight away from your respective programs, Cody?
Yes and no. I mean, yes, obviously you have to take account what they just did. That Antrell mother trucker is a bad dude. who could move like 7 cats put together. His performance was impressive. The story of them having a bunch of guys deciding to cut weight, that means they bought into whatever's being sold in Lincoln, Nebraska at the moment. So you have to take account that is a problem. Yet, I will also throw in this caveat here. I think David Taylor just proved that he's going to have his guys ready for nationals even before everything else, right? Before Big 12s, before Iowa. That is the most important thing. And he showed up and he essentially showed out. So I do think that Nebraska is going to be a problem, but they're no longer a secret, right? So everybody outside of the Big Ten had no idea that Nebraska was going to be able to put up the numbers that they did in the Natties. Now we know. Now there's film on most of that roster. So I think when you have some of the David Taylor, the Cale Sanderson level teachers of the game, even Tom Brands, whenever you factor in what they're able to teach their guys now with the understanding that Nebraska is good, we've got film on these dudes. These guys are returning. I do think it's going to be more difficult for them to repeat what they did this season.
Trent.
I think Cody brought it up really well. It's going from being the hunter to the hunted, right?
There you go.
And there's going to be a target on Nebraska's back, and it's no more. Now, it also took a quarter century for Mark Manning to finally get to this level because there's been a lot of disappointments in his 25 years in Nebraska. A lot of times it felt like they were trending towards something that we saw this past weekend, and it didn't get there. So they got to prove it a little bit more to me. We talked in our preview episode, right, that I think all of us really like Nebraska and their chance, and we talked about the odds that were out there of them finishing, in the team race in second place and how good those odds were, and we're able to make a little bit of money, which was great to see over the weekend. But that aside, this is going to be a different type of equation in doing that. And Cody, you mentioned it. Those guys sucking down for this year, well, is that realistic for back-to-back years? Are you going to be able to do that? Probably going to have to move back up. And suddenly those guys are able to suck down and become All-Americans, become guys wrestling on Saturday night for the gold. Those guys no longer are quite at that level because they're bumping back up maybe to their more natural weight. So I think that's another piece of the component that you have to look at.
Are we concerned about any other programs? Because Ryan Crookham called his shot on social media. He didn't wrestle in this postseason due to an injury, an unfortunate circumstance. I want to see the best of the best make the NCAA tournament and make it as exciting as possible. But Crookham says that it was posed, who is going to be the first team to unseat Penn State and win a national championship? He says Lehigh. And at first I said, okay, this guy's just, optimistic. He's around his teammates. And then you start doing a little bit of digging. Lehigh is playing the long game here with, yes, you didn't have Crookham this time around. You had a strong showing from Michael Beard, but you start to get some other wrestlers back that took a red shirt or they were injured. For example, a Luke Stanich is somebody that's going to join in the lineup, and he's an NCAA title contender at the lighter weight. So Lehigh, Ohio State, maybe because they get Rocco Welsh back, Nick Bazakis, get Brendan McCrone. So there are a lot of Brandon Cannon. There are a lot of talented wrestlers that started to break out towards the end of the season that I look at the likes of Lehigh and Ohio State that maybe this isn't just a 4-team race, or it's Penn State and then Oklahoma State, Iowa, and Nebraska. That maybe Lehigh and Ohio State really want a piece of the pie here too.
I'll go real quick, Trent. I think you absolutely nailed it. But the one thing that I don't think people are paying attention to is, of course, your Ohio State's going to be sneaky good. Lehigh, Cornell, Iowa State, those are always going to be sneaky good teams. But here's the difference. That wrestling room in Penn State, the wrestling room in Iowa, the wrestling room in Stillwater has more competition than everybody else in the country. So you can have one of the top wrestlers at a Cornell, at a Lehigh, but the amount of knowledge in the wrestling room and the amount of competitiveness that is going to allow you to learn new moves and be able to implement them on the mat, I think are going to be more difficult for some of those universities as opposed to the 3 heavy hitters.
This environment, if you're talking about even 5 years ago, all right, you can make a compelling case, and maybe, just maybe, this can happen. We know who's spending money. It's Zach on our left, Cody in the middle, and me on the right. That's who's spending money.
Yeah.
And because of that, the likelihood that even if it all comes together perfectly for Lehigh, you know what's going to be coming. And all of a sudden, you can wrestle your senior year and make 6 figures doing it,
right,
or you can finish up your career. It's so difficult. And, when we look at football, we look at basketball, the paydays that are still there at the professional ranks, they're not there at wrestling. And because of that, I think it's going to be even more difficult for that tier team, even to get in the top 5 or a top 4 and bring home a trophy. It's going to be so tough because by the time those guys are an All-American and they're going into their junior and senior year, they got one chance, maybe 2 years at a payday, and they're going to be looking around and they're going to be looking at our 3 programs.
Trent, I'm actually glad that you brought up that point because it's a perfect segue as Arkansas Little Rock just lost two of its top wrestlers in the lineup, Nasir Bailey, Jordan Williams, going to the transfer portal. The first thing everybody says, they're going to Iowa. So let's address some of this transfer portal chaos and just react to the spectacle. Was that the greatest upset in all of combat sports? I'm talking ever history with Wyatt Hendrickson upending Gable Stevenson. We'll discuss it more coming up on this Locked On Crossover. Today's episode is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Daylight savings snuck up on us again. If you're feeling that lost hour of sleep, 5 Hour Energy has your back. The extra sunshine means more time for fun, but sometimes you need a little boost to power through. Whether you're staying up late to watch the NCAA tournament, squeezing in a round of golf after work, or just trying to keep up with your busy day, 5 Hour Energy gives you that quick, refreshing pick-me-up whenever you need it. Basketball madness is going on right now. If you're going to be staying up, you're going to be staying up late to watch some of this tournament action, and 5 Hour Energy helps you keep up with the next day. Extra daylight means extra activities with longer days. If you love getting outside to go for a hike, go for a run, you can choose flavors like Tropical Burst for a quick boost from 5 Hour Energy. And it's the on-the-go convenience. Whether you're traveling, you're at an event, 5 Hour Energy is easy to grab and it will keep you feeling refreshed. Head over to 5hourenergy.com to find over 15 flavors to choose from, including watermelon, blue raspberry, peach mango, or tropical burst, and more. You can even build your own 12 or 24 pack and have it delivered right to your door. Do you need one now? Grab a 5 Hour Energy shot at your local grocery store or convenience store. They are everywhere. Stock up today and stay energized with 5 Hour Energy. That is 5 Hour Energy.
The NCAA tournament is here, and so is the bracket breakdown.
Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
So the transfer portal's already going crazy. Hey, Penn State actually, for what it's worth at this time of the recording, had that exodus that I said, touted, saying Penn State and Cale Sanderson are able to hold it all together. And then 5 wrestlers, potentially more from what I've heard, could enter into the portal. So Penn State could have somewhere of 7-8 names leave. There's just not a lot of room. It's different from football and basketball. It's not about minutes. It's not about snap counts. You have your 10 starters, and that's that. So Alex Facundo's a name that's been linked to potentially going to Oklahoma State and following David Taylor. But I just look at the likes of, you see there's turnover at Iowa State. You see there's turnover at Arkansas Little Rock, which was one of those programs maybe comparable to Lehigh, where they did get a hefty investment, but not hefty enough to go up against the big spenders. Penn State, Iowa, Oklahoma State. It's just the way this sport is.
Right.
And Arkansas Little Rock, committed around $1.5 million, and that's still not enough. Those names that were household names at Little Rock are now going into the portal, cashing in on their success. Trent, I'm going to throw it to you because everybody's already linking them to Iowa. What are the odds that Nasir Bailey and or Jordan Williams end up with the Hawkeyes?
Well, you start with the Bailey part of the conversation. Of course, he wrestled at 33, got to the round of 16 before he moved to the back end of things. Well, I would just had a finalist at 33. So Drake Ayala, does he have another season at 33, or do they anticipate he's going to grow into 141? Or is it Bailey that's the one that's going to grow into 141? We know that Iowa does have a pretty big hole there. I'd take a next step with Jordan Williams. Is he a guy at 49 that makes sense? They have a lot of depth there. The guys have some guys coming back off of injury, Ryder amongst them. So there's a lot of names in the mix there at 49 for Iowa. I would say of the two, again, it comes down to size, and I think Nasir Bailey, though, would be the one, at least to me, that would make the most sense, just depending on what they see going forward, both with his weight and possibly bumping up, or is it Drake Ayala?
Well, Cody, at one point in time, Jordan Williams was at Oklahoma State. So does he return? And then Alex Facundo seems like a strong contender to transfer because of the David Taylor Penn State connection. What names are you looking at on the portal that say Cowboy? He has Cowboy written all over him.
Well, I do think that the Penn State connection with David Taylor is always going to be a conversation every single year. So I do think that addition makes the most amount of sense. Him coming back to Stillwater seems obviously pretty unlikely, but at the same time, I will admit that when we did have some transfers go out, he was really the only one that Oklahoma State fans felt like, kind of got away. And we like our storylines. It's so funny to me that Thomas Gilman wanted to fist fight John Smith years ago, and now he's a diehard Oklahoma State Cowboy. At the same time, we just got Swerzik from Iowa State, whom lost to Jordan Williams in the Big 12 2 years ago and threw an AJ Ferrari level conniption fit on the mat. It's kind of ironic that this guy hated his match with Jordan Williams and talked a bunch of crap. Now Jordan Williams is on the move, and now he's a Cowboy. There's so many storylines to all this. It's crazy. I'm excited to see where Jordan Williams go. And Nasir Bailey is an absolute beast that I think I agree with Trent. It does make the most amount of sense for him to end up there.
Casey Swiderski, former All-American, was that Iowa State wrestler that moved on and is committed to Oklahoma State. Cody Chittum entered the transfer portal as well. He was an All-American with Iowa State. And something that people have pointed out is that, well, when Chittum goes into the portal, it's because a Ferrari is going to join that program. So just keep an eye on that. Maybe let's read the tea leaves, writing on the wall that Ferrari could end up at Iowa State. Let's get into the home stretch here because we did witness history. We saw Carter Starocci.
We did. You're damn right we did.
We saw Carter Starocci lead off with winning a 5th NCAA title, and it didn't feel close in the moment. He was the aggressor in that match. Yeah. Parker Kakaisen kind of seemed like his back was against the wall, and that Starocci, there was no pressure, no issue, and he won accordingly, even though it was close, 4-3. But
I'm gonna push back a little bit there.
All right, go for it.
No, Kakaisen, yes, Starocci obviously is better, but the gap wasn't that significant. And there were a couple of shots there, especially early on. Kakaisen had opportunities in that match. Starocci, all right, I'll give you your flowers. You won your 5th national championship, but don't be talking down to the Panther over there, Zach. All right?
It's not. I'm not trying to argue that Kakaisen's not in the same class as Starocci. They are, but I'm arguing that in this moment again, when I watched the NWCA All-Star Classic, that one felt like Kakaisen had a better chance to defeat him than this time around when a 5th NCAA. There's no pressure in that one. Pressure comes to shove, and Starocci responds, and now is going to be the only 5-time NCAA champion. I'm not trying to dismiss Parker Kakaisen. I know he's as good as he is, but it did feel like Starocci was in more of control this time around with something larger on the line than the NWCA All-Star Classic. So the gap's minimal, but it did a little bit. It moved a little bit. Starocci moving ahead, taking the title as it is. Wyatt Hendrickson against Gable Stevenson.
So awesome.
Cody,
Dude, that was just great for the sport. That was absolutely phenomenal.
It was
for the
needed.
Sport. Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, Gable kind of, stirred the match before it ever even started, talking about I'm the only Olympic champion that deserves to drape a flag. I think he did some stuff to inspire Wyatt to a different level, right? I think that was huge for the sport of wrestling. Obviously, you're seeing it being trending all over the country right now, and it just proves what David Taylor can do. I can tell you as a lifelong Oklahoma State fan, right? Has had season tickets since the mid-'90s. That is one of the top Oklahoma State moments I've ever witnessed in my entire lifetime. And my favorite shot is of the background of the crowd. 95% of that building was not Oklahoma State fans, but they were going absolutely bonkers for what Wyatt Hendrickson did because of the buildup, because of the viewership, the eyeballs, and what a massive name Gable Stevenson is, not just in wrestling, but all across the country, WWE, NFL, whatever the case may be. That was a true David versus Goliath moment, and it was phenomenal for the sport of wrestling that he won it, which is why I know Starocci, first 5 winner of all time, but Wyatt Hendrickson's got to win the Hodge. Ain't that right, Trent?
I'm with you. Absolutely.
Shut up, baby.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
I'm actually with you too.
No way.
Because look, objectively speaking, for what the Hodge Trophy stands for is people are on the Penn State side of things are trying to make the argument for Mitchell Messenbrick that it's not Carter Starocci, it's not Wyatt Hendrickson basically pinned his way through the entire regular season, through the NCAA tournament up until Greg Kirkfleet, and then knocked off not 1 but 2 back-to-back reigning NCAA champions in the semifinal and the finals accordingly when he was not expected to. Now, he might have been expected to in the Oklahoma State circle and maybe some other people that, hey, we know how serious Greg Kirkfleet's situation is with his leg, with his injury, but when you ask the general public, it's probably going to be Stevenson all over again. He'll defeat Kirkfleet, and that's that. No, Wyatt Hendrickson disrupted all of that, I want to go as far as, and now I am not an expert when it comes to every single combat sport, whether it's MMA, UFC, MMA, WWE, but I have to say that this conservatively goes down as one of the best upsets of all time across all combat sports. Trent, maybe you can attest to that a little more.
Yeah, I don't have the depth of knowledge either. I'm strictly a college wrestling fan, and because of that, I don't have the depth of knowledge into it. I'll just tell for somebody that has been following collegiate wrestling since the 1980s, that was a scene unlike anything that I can think of. And there's been some incredible moments, some big upsets, things that have happened in the past. But when you kind of couple everything together, what it meant, Stevenson coming back after being away for so long, and the domination that we still saw from him, and then that ending in that kind of moment, that is going to be an all-timer. And I think that's going to be one that we're going to be talking about for years and years and years. Where were you when that happened as it pertains to the world of college wrestling?
Cody, get the final word.
When it comes to other combat sports, I would put it up there with a McGregor loss, right? That absolutely shattered the world. Or Ben Askren catching a knee to his nose in the opening 8 seconds against Masvidal. I feel like this is one of those level of moments. And again, I think you're trying to grow the sport of wrestling, and having the commentators and everybody out there was absolutely phenomenal. Hopefully, this is kind of a transcendent moment for the sport of wrestling to get more eyeballs on it, to make it more of a national viewership level sport.
That's certainly the idea, and that's why we have these types of conversations with this mega Locked On crossover featuring myself, Zach Seyko, Locked On Nittany Lions, Cody Stovall of Locked On Oklahoma State, and Trent Condon of Locked On Hawkeyes. Follow up with your respective teams. Subscribe to each of our YouTube channels and wherever you get your podcasts to stay up to date with everything Penn State, Oklahoma State, and Iowa related. Thank you, gentlemen, so much for the time. Thank you, everyone, for checking out this Locked On crossover. And we'll have more conversations about your favorite teams here on the Locked On Podcast Network.